Hi, and welcome to this video in which you'll be getting an orientation to the Generation to Generation Fund, which is an extra dimension of stewardship for needs beyond the normal operating budget. So the monies that we're going to be talking about, we need to understand that these are not things that we can tap into for things like salaries or utilities or normal programming, but instead these funds are an opportunity to be funding the future by meeting extraordinary needs and greeting extraordinary opportunities. And we've probably all had the situation where we've been sitting in a committee meeting and somebody comes up with an absolutely fantastic idea to either meet a need or greet an opportunity that has arisen. And the first question that almost always comes out of people's mouths is, well, how are we going to pay for it? Oftentimes those needs or opportunities go unmet because there's not room for them in our normal operating budget. We didn't anticipate them. And in those situations, it'd probably be foolish for us to pursue them. But by having something in place like the Generation to Generation Fund, we have a tool where when those opportunities arise or those needs arise, we can meet them whether they're in our budget or not. So this is a fantastic opportunity for us to be able to expand the ministry of First Presbyterian Church well into the future. Now, our particular permanent funds ministry is made up of 4 funds. There's the General Endowment Fund, Designated Gifts, Capital Facilities, and a Programs, Mission, and Benevolence Fund. And when someone gives to the permanent funds ministry, their gift can come in one of 2 forms. It may be a restricted gift, which is a gift directed toward one of the 4 funds. For example, if someone were to say, I would like to give monies to the Capital Facilities Fund, they would be placed in that fund and could be used for no other purpose, and that would be a restricted gift. Someone may want to give a gift that's just a general gift to the permanent funds ministry and not specify a particular fund. And in that case, those are regarded as unrestricted gifts. And we actually have a policy in place for how we divide up unrestricted gifts into the various funds. And I'll go over that in just a moment. But first, we're going to pause and re-look at those 4 funds. Once again, they were the General Endowment, Designated Gifts, Capital Facilities, Programs, Mission, and Benevolence. The General Endowment is probably really the heart of our permanent funds ministry because the principal in that fund stays in perpetuity. In other words, whatever gifts are placed in the General Endowment, they will be there generations and generations to come, generating income. The income that comes off the General Endowment gets distributed in a very specific way. One half of it is reinvested in the General Endowment to build the heart of our permanent funds ministry. 1/4 is placed in the Capital Facilities Fund, and the other remaining quarter is placed in Programs, Mission, and Benevolence. Now, a moment ago I mentioned that an unrestricted gift, a gift that is not specified in any particular manner, is distributed into the other funds. And when it is, it's distributed by these same percentages. Every unrestricted gift is going to have 1/2 of it placed in the General Endowment, 1/4 of it will be placed in Capital Facilities, and the remaining 1/4 will be placed in Programs, Mission, and Benevolence. Now, unlike the General Endowment, our Capital Facilities, Program, Mission, and Benevolence funds are funds in which the principal and the income are both available. And that can be really helpful. For example, let's say we have a large building expansion or a major renovation to the building that needs to occur that would be way outside our normal operating budget. We could plan for that, and over years we could build up the Capital Facilities Fund, and when the project came around, we would be free not only to spend the income, but if necessary, also spend the principal. Now, that leaves just one fund remaining, which we haven't discussed, the Designated Gifts Fund. In the Designated Gifts Fund, the principal may or may not be held in perpetuity depending on how it is defined by the donor. Some examples of designated gifts that we have had in the past that predate our permanent funds ministry, and these funds are not actually necessarily a part of our permanent funds ministry, but they're good examples of what a designated gift may look like, would be the Malcolm Lecture Fund. The Malcolm Lecture Fund is a designated gift in that it was given for a specific purpose, and we were instructed not to use the principal of it, only to use the income. Similarly, the Music or Youth Fund, those are funds that are given for a very specific purpose, but unlike the Malcolm Lecture Fund, those are funds where we have the principal accessible to us, and should we need to expend it, we can. Now that pretty much covers the four funds that normally comprise the permanent funds ministry of First Presbyterian Church. I say normally, there is the possibility that if we were to get an exceptional gift, we can establish what is called a quasi-endowment. The quasi-endowment fund would only be created if we were given a gift that was larger than the average of the previous 2 years' church operating budgets. What would happen is we would take 50% of that gift and we would place it into an unrestricted, we would treat it as an unrestricted fund, and it would be divided by the proportions that we mentioned a moment ago. And the other 50% would be placed into what we would call a quasi-endowment fund. Now, why would we do that? Well, basically, we would do that because an exceptional gift may present an exceptional opportunity that it would be prudent to prayerfully consider before we act upon it. And this policy of having a quasi-endowment gives us the opportunity as a session to slow down and prayerfully look at the opportunity that may be available there. And so that's why that's there. Hopefully that will be an issue we have to cross at some time. It would be great to get a gift of that size. And if we do, fortunately we have a mechanism to deal with it. That pretty much wraps up an explanation of our permanent funds ministry. If you're not aware, you should be aware that the monies within the Generation to Generation Fund are invested with the Texas Presbyterian Foundation. It is an organization that the session, upon establishing our endowment, felt very comfortable with investing with because they've been serving the church since 1925. I say the church, meaning the broader church. They provide services in the areas of permanent funds development, gift administration, and investment management. They have a great reputation broadly among colleagues in ministry. There's over 202 client congregations right now with them, and they also serve 65 other church-related organizations. And by church-related organizations, what I mean, for example, our Synod of the Sun, the synod that we're in, our Presbytery of the Pines, and our neighboring Presbytery of Arkansas, are all agencies, all organizations that have monies invested with the Texas Presbyterian Foundation. Well, that pretty much concludes your orientation to a permanent funds ministry here at First Presbyterian Church in Texarkana. Something we're very excited about. We're going to be working hard to establish. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. We're all on the learning curve of understanding this, and we look forward to the opportunities and the needs that it's going to be meeting in the future.